What is going on, guys? My name is Tim Roswick, and today we're talking about the number one mistake that I see most mobile game developers make, and this mistake drives me crazy. And the craziest thing about this mistake is not just making the mistake, but it's the mistake that it doesn't even cross most people's mind. It doesn't even they don't even think it's a mistake. They think it's a design choice. What am I talking about? The thing that drives me the most crazy on every mobile game that I've ever played that has this is on-screen controls. When someone tries to adapt a game that uses something like this, like an Xbox controller, and they put it on a touchscreen, it drives me crazy. I get requested to play a lot of games. I get a lot of emails. I get a lot of tweets and stuff like that. And I'm happy to play people's mobile games. I'm happy to test them out and do stuff like that. But I can't play games with on-screen controls. They're unresponsive. They don't work. Like an on-screen joypad is just it drives me crazy. The biggest mistake that I see mobile game developers make is they don't design for the platform. And this isn't just mobile game developers. This is all game developers. It's not the biggest mistake overall in game development, but I think it's one of the biggest design mistakes that I see newer developers make, because they don't keep something like this in mind. If you're going to make an Xbox game, this is exactly how many buttons you have. You don't have more, you don't have less. This is exactly how many buttons you have. PlayStation, very similar amount, except you've got a touchpad. If you're designing for a keyboard, if you're going to design for a computer, you've got a mouse and keyboard, you should also make it playable with a controller, because a lot of people play with controllers. On top of that, there are a lot of people who have different keyboard layouts, right? Different keyboard layouts than you may have. So you may want to make rebindable controls to make sure that works for the platform. Designing for the platform is one of the most important things that you can do from the get-go to make your game awesome. Like, if you're going to make an awesome game, you have to start with this from the bare minimum, right? Like, this is like the baseline of you've got to do this from the start. Mobile games that design with on-screen controls drive me crazy because I don't feel like they're native to the platform. They feel like they're adapted onto whatever I'm using. They feel like they are just made for something else, and then they're just thrown onto the mobile phone. I'll never forget when I got my Palm Trio. I was probably 10 years ago now. I was so excited to get this Palm Trio that had Windows on it, and I got this Palm Trio. It came with a little stylus, and I opened it up, and I realized there's a little start button down there. So this little tiny start button. So I love Windows, right? It's gonna be awesome. So I touched the start button on the stylus. I got to go to File, Open, and I got to open an Excel file, and then there's little scroll bars on the side. I have to scroll with the stylus, and I thought that was great because I could use Windows on my phone until I started trying to use it, and it's not that great. And then, of course, what happened? Touchscreen phones like the iPhone and Android came out, revolutionized the way we see touch. After I use an Android phone or an iPhone, there's no way I could go back to that. There's no way I could go back to a Windows mobile with a start button. It had a tiny little start button in the bottom left of the screen, just like my computer. They didn't redesign the phone. They adapted the Windows UI onto this little ass phone. That is lazy game design. That is horrible design in my opinion. You can't do that. That's not how you make something awesome. At the bare minimum, you got to start with designing for the hardware. That's one of the reasons that's made Apple so much money and made them such a great company, is because they design for the hardware. They design for their device specifically. With game development, that's one of the things that made Angry Birds just such an insane franchise, right? They designed for their device. Yeah, they did a lot of other stuff, right? Yeah, they had friends in the industry. Yeah, they did this a few times, right? They made a few games. But they designed for touch. And they did it so well in a time where no one else was designing for touch. Everyone else was adapting all the other games onto touchscreens that just didn't make the games feel good. And touch can make you feel good. If you look at any of my mobile games, you look at Symmetra, it's a drag mechanic, uses touch. If you look at Impossible Climb, which used to be Ascension, it's a drag and flick mechanic. It uses touch. If you look at Ocean Raiders, that uses drag to move your ship, and it uses a tap to fire your cannon. It uses touch. All of my games use touch as a core mechanic when they're designed for touch. Now, there's a lot of different ways you could do this, right? And one of the coolest ways that I've seen, if you want to be cross-platform, but you still want to have it work, is you can use touch and mouse simultaneously. You can use them as interchangeable objects. They're not always interchangeable, right? Like, there are key differences between mouse and touch. For example, you can hover over something with a mouse. It's really hard to do with touchscreen. With touchscreen, you tap. You don't really hover over it like a mouse. So, for example, the hover over effect that might be active on a mouse could be the touch effect that you see on a touchscreen, because then you know it's highlighted or something like that. So you want to keep in mind how people are going to play your games, how they're going to experience what you create, because sometimes those little experiences can make or break a game. For the long time, I've wanted to do a platformer on mobile, but I can't figure out how to do it the right way without on-screen controls. And like, people keep telling me they play Phasmophobia as a mobile game. I can't get that game on this kind of like platform without on-screen controls, and there's no way in hell I'm going to do that. I can't stand it. It drives me crazy. One of the things I'm experimenting with, by the way, if you guys are looking maybe into ideas on how to make a platformer or something like that without touchscreen controls, because it's a good way to design, I'm experimenting with a 2-button control type of thing, where I basically, it's different than on-screen controls. Basically, I would split the screen in half. The right side of the screen would be one giant button. The left side of the screen would be another giant button. The whole problem with on-screen controls is they're really responsive. Sometimes they're small, and if they're big enough, they cover the screen. But with 2 big invisible buttons on either side of the screen, it'd be pretty much a tap mechanic. And I've been experimenting with a platformer that's kind of mixed with a runner, where the guy always runs. He always runs. And the right side of the screen would be the jump button. The left side of the screen would be a switch direction button. So basically, you could control an entire platform in that way. And I've been experimenting with that, but like, it's not perfect. But I'm keeping in mind the platform when I'm designing the game. I'm designing this for a specific game. Like, I want the controls to feel native, or they shouldn't be on the platform, to be honest, because like, it's just so frustrating, and it doesn't feel native. It never feels like a core experience. It always feels like something that's slapped on, and I hate when games feel like they're slapped on. I don't want any of my games to feel like they're just slapped on mobile, for sure. Like, that would frustrate the hell out of me. So a little bit ranty today, a little bit of my mind, but I hope you found it useful. If there are things that drive you crazy about platform-specific design or anything that people do, common mistakes, leave them down below. If you got any suggestions for future videos, you can leave those down below. I have a link in the description where you can submit ideas for videos. But if you found this helpful, please hit me a like. If you're new to this channel and you want to see more content like this, I post a video every single day. Hit the subscribe button. Once again, I'm Tim Roswick, and I will see you again tomorrow.